What a very, very good afternoon and a warm welcome to you guys. Hi, welcome to the third episode of Man to Man. My name is Cassim. Welcome. Firstly, just want to say thank you so much for watching. I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time. Not sure what you're doing today, not sure. It's actually raining outside, so it's not a very nice day today. But, well, that's all a matter of perspective. But, thank you so much for watching. Let me just do some housekeeping stuff. If you like what I share with you today, if you like this kind of stuff and you want to keep supporting me, jump on my YouTube channel and subscribe to it so that I can keep growing my database there, and hopefully I can reach more people and I can help more people with these sorts of things. But apart from that, I want to get into today's show. I don't really want to waste too much time because there's a lot of stuff that I want to talk to you guys about. Last week, there was a lot of stuff that I spoke to you about, but I didn't get time to speak to you about multiple things that I wanted to speak to you about, and I wanted to condense those things today into today's show, and I really want to ensure that I share most of this stuff with you. There is essentially four things that I want to talk to you about today. I want to talk to you about getting it out of your mind that an inheritance is coming. I want to talk to you about working really hard as a guy. I want to talk about becoming a problem solver, and I want to talk about being open-minded. Where should I begin? I actually am going to begin with the inheritance thing because I think that's really important for us to begin. But before I actually get into that, let me just say a couple of things that I think are really important. Most of you know that the reason why I started this show is that I wanted to talk to man, right? I basically learned that it's different when a man speaks to another man versus when a woman speaks to the same man. The same message coming from man is completely different and is received in a different way and a different tone than if it's coming from a woman. In other words, your mum can tell you to stop doing something or that you're messing up your life, and it will not resonate in the same way as if your dad or your uncle is talking to you about the same thing. And so that's what I essentially wanted to start this show to do. I wanted to speak to you man to man. I wanted to have an honest conversation where we can have a platform where I can talk to you in case you don't have a male figure in your life that basically can tell you some things that are deep, tell you some things that you really need to refine and look at and focus on. Because I realize some people don't have fathers, some people don't have older brothers, some people don't have a confidant. And there's some things that I think are really important for us guys to know, that without you having another male talk to you about these kinds of things, you would never know these kinds of things. So I'm not doing this to become famous. I'm not doing this to be rich or anything. I'm just doing it because I just simply want to help my fellow human beings, my lads. So I hope that some of the things that I help you today, some of the things that I share with you today can help you become a higher fellow expression of yourself. So let's go. Let's start off by me talking to you about actually what you've probably seen the title of this is. I think I titled this something on the lines of, you've got to get it out of your mind that your parents' house is going to be yours. So, many of you will know that I have spent a considerable amount of my time trying to figure out ways how somebody can become successful and at the same time be happy and be fulfilled in life. And one of the things that I essentially had to do in order to answer that question is I had to go and speak to people who were predominantly much further ahead in life than me. So people who are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, that kind of age group. Because one of the things that I've come to realize in my own life, and is something that I want to share with you, is this. This was actually kind of a bit of a shock to me when I began to realize this. Nothing is new. Nothing really is new in the world. Nothing that you're going to experience in your lifetime is really going to be that new. The problems that you're going to have in your relationships, there's thousands of other people who've had the same problems. The issues that you're going to have about depression and mental health and finding your purpose and fulfillment and trying to balance work and relationships and trying to balance your health, all of those problems that you're going to have, there's thousands of people who've already experienced the same things. And I know that to some of you who are listening to me, you may be like, Cassim, what, are you some sort of fucking idiot? Well, of course that's basic. Like, not like what else is new? But I didn't know that. And I may be a bit naive, but I genuinely didn't know that most of the things that I was going to experience in my life, basically thousands and millions of other people have experienced them. For example, there was a point in my life where I struggled a lot with money, but I didn't know that there were thousands and hundreds and millions of other people who'd struggled with money and they had basically figured out how to handle it. I didn't know that, right? And when I discovered this, my whole world exploded, because basically what I learned when this happened was that I don't have to try and have all the answers. I don't have to try and figure everything out myself. I don't have to be the genius to come up with all the solutions to my problems. All I have to do is go and find people who've already accomplished or who have already gone through the same experience as me, and then ask them how they did it, right? So in this pursuit, one of the things that I started doing is I started, as I mentioned earlier on, speaking to people who are a lot more advanced in life than me, people who are much older than me, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, to try and figure out what do they know that is coming up in my life. And one of the things that it has been a pattern that I've begun to notice, and is what I really want to talk to you about today in this first segment, is around the fact of what happens when people receive an inheritance. So most of you are probably, this is not even going to be a thing you're probably even aware of, because you've probably never looked at life this far ahead. But what happens is, and it's a common thread, I mean, you wouldn't even believe this, okay? But what happens is when an inheritance is given, there tends to be a separation in family. So I work with a woman called Caroline, and when I was working with Caroline, I work with her in Tesco's. She was saying to me about what she was. We were working in the morning, and I was saying, "Oh, Caroline, what are you doing today?" And she was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go and see my grandchildren." And I was like, "Oh, do you have any like brothers or sisters or whatever?" And she goes, "Yeah, I do. I have a brother, but I haven't spoken to my brother in 24 years." And I said, "What? What happened? Why have you not spoken to your brother in 24 years? And she goes, "Well, Cass, when our parents died, I'd spent years and years and years looking after my father, and what ended up happening was he didn't come to see my father for like 6 years, and then on the day that my father passed away, or he heard our father pass away, he basically came and he started asking about money and the inheritance and what was going to happen with their house and what was going to happen with the will. And it upset me so much that I haven't spoken to him in 24 years. And the lesson and the message that I really want to get across to you is, some of you who are listening to me, this may not be you, but I'm just talking from experience because I have had to deconstruct this for myself. Some of you in your life, without you even realizing it, you are waiting for an inheritance. You, without you realizing, are waiting for somebody to rescue you. You're waiting on outside factors to dictate whether you're going to become successful, whether you're going to become happy. Some of you who are listening to me, you're waiting on people in your own life to basically change before you basically feel free, before you have the ability to be able to go after your dreams. Some of you who are listening to me, like I came to a realization, and this was so difficult for me to come to this realization. I came to a realization that I was actually expecting for my parents to leave their house to me when they died. I didn't even realize that I was doing that until I was looking at this, and I was like, hold on a minute, Cass. You genuinely would be upset if your mum and dad passed away and they did not leave you at their house. I would be upset because I thought in the back of my mind, why wouldn't my mum leave her house to me? Why wouldn't I get that as an inheritance? And without me even realizing it, inadvertently, I basically did not go and find out how money worked. I did not think about having a private pension, having multiple streams of income, because I was like, well, when my parents pass away, I'm going to inherit their house and I'm going to have all that money. So why would I need to worry about a pension? Why would I need to have multiple properties rented out? For what reason, right? My parents, when they pass away, by the time they do that, I'm probably going to be retired, and then I'm going to have this huge house which I can sell and have this huge chunk of money, right? And so what I'm saying is, some of you, without you realizing it, you're exactly in the same mindset that I used to be. You are waiting on things to change, and you're waiting for people to come in and rescue you before you can ever really get to have some of the things that you want. You may be like me, right, where you're thinking in the back of your mind, you know what? Yeah, but the government are going to help me. I'm going to have a pension when I retire. I was thinking about this, and I was thinking, hold on a minute. The government are constantly changing. I could pay years and years and years into a pension, and then the company can go bankrupt or something like that, and I'm going to be fucked. So some of you who are listening to me, right, you every single month at your job, you get to pay into a private pension. But you don't know what's going to happen. That company could go bust. Like, anything could happen between now and when you get that pension, right? Anything could happen. I mean, look at how much of the world is changing today, and how much there are companies, for example, that have been around for like 100 years, and you would think they would never bust, and yet some of those companies are bust. And what I'm saying to you is, some of you, you're passive in your life. You're waiting and relying on things. You basically don't have a backup plan. You're not wise enough. And this is what I had to come to realize. I wasn't wise enough to understand that things can go wrong. That no matter how much I plan for something, I've got to leave room and a backup plan for if things go wrong. And some of you, you're relying on some factors that, honestly, the chances of them failing or something going wrong is very, 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 very easy. This is part of the reason why I've decided that I've got to have multiple streams of income. Right? Some of you who are listening to me, your only income that you have is your job. If anything, God forbid, were ever to happen to you, and you have children, and you have a mortgage, if you were to lose your job, you'd be fucked. You'd have, lads, I'm being serious about this, right? If you were to lose your job, and you couldn't find another job, you could not pay your mortgage. You couldn't pay your rent. And so one of the things that I would encourage you to think about is really start thinking about the fact that, have you looked at the various arenas of your life and tried to figure out multiple ways that it could go wrong, multiple ways that it can disrupt your life? Because many of you are not counting on the fact that, I think this is actually, when I begin to look at this inheritance and why so many people don't speak to their families. I mean, you would be shocked, guys. You wouldn't even think this is a big thing. When I talked to my dad me and my dad went for a meal yesterday, and we were talking about this, and he said to me, literally, one of his friends right now is in a situation where they have this exact problem. There was an inheritance in the family, and because of the inheritance, something happened, and now brothers and sisters don't speak to each other. By the way, let me tell you something about Caroline and her brother. Do you know what she said to me? She said, Cassim, I haven't spoken to him in 24 years. He has children who have now grown up, and they only live in Early. She lives in Tilehurst. So Tilehurst and Early, for those of you who don't live in Reading, is like probably a 10-15 minute drive to get there. And she has not seen her brother in 24 years, all because of money. And so what I'm saying to you is, the way that I've tried to think about this is, if you are somebody who's relying on something, and for example, an inheritance, and you're relying on your parents' house being yours, and you're relying on the government coming through with your pension, and you're relying on your boss giving you that job promotion, what will ultimately happen is that you will change yourself, and you will dim yourself down and mold yourself around to whatever is going to get you that thing. And the issue that you have is, for example, in the area of inheritance, is if you then, and you guys, like, let's talk honestly here. I said at the beginning of this that I was going to be very deep today. Let's talk honestly. Some of you know that if you know that your mum or your dad are going to pass away, and there is a house that is worth, let's say, £700,000, and there's only two of you, your brother and your sister, that means if that house gets sold, you get half the money, right? Some of you are going to be present in your parents' life in the last year or the last 2 years or whatever. And I know that it may sound horrible for me to say that, but the reality is that's what people do. In the back of their mind, they may not want to say it, but let's be honest, guys, come on. We all know this to be the truth. People will do that. And I can honestly speak from experience because I would think like that. Like, if I know that there is 400 grand coming my way, I'm just all of a sudden going to disappear off the planet? I don't think so, right? That doesn't make me a bad person. I'm just saying that would cross my mind, and I'm just being completely honest with you. And I think what ends up ultimately happening for many of us is that when we rely on something and we have our whole cards bet on one thing and it doesn't come out, that's how people get upset. That's how people are like, I've looked after my mum and dad and then you haven't been there. Now all of a sudden you're coming in and you want this inheritance. It's not right. It's not fair. Which is what I found ends up happening. You know, when you put your whole effort into a job and you are relying on your job giving you that, your manager giving you that promotion, but the job doesn't go to you, you all of a sudden get upset because it's like, it's not right that they're denying you something that you should have, or something that you've worked hard for. And so what I would share with you, and, you know, this is honestly your life, but just talking man to man here, is really begin to look at some of the expectations that you're having in your life and whether you are looking at multiple ways that you can overcome those, multiple ways that they could affect your connections, your relationships, right? Start thinking about this kind of stuff. I was just really thinking about that this week, and I just thought that I would share that with you because it's something that I've been thinking about. Because, you know, some of you are listening to me, but you don't realize that you can change, right? Like, for example, when I studied divorce, which I spend a lot of time studying divorce because I want to try and help as many of you guys as possible not get to a position where you're divorced because it causes so much mayhem and chaos with your children or when you have children. I've got to tell you that you will be shocked at how vile men become when they're going through a divorce. You'll be shocked at how manipulative women will become of you guys when you're going through divorce. They'll manipulate you, they'll use your children against you, they'll use your income against you, they'll try to take every penny away from you. And you think, how can somebody who loved people who loved each other, who they got married, who they made vows towards each other, be so vile through the divorce? And you've got to start thinking about this kind of stuff. This doesn't mean that you want your relationship to divorce. It doesn't mean that you want your marriage to end up in tatters. But you've got to really start thinking about this kind of stuff. Working on your character, working on your mindset, predicting. You know, I say to people, like, if you're married, you've got to start studying people who are divorced. Start looking at what is it that leads these people to get divorced. Because I'm telling you, if you just go into a marriage and you somehow think that, oh, Cass, it's just going to magically, we're going to end up being married for 50 years. One of the things that you're not taking into account is you're not taking into account things that are going to go wrong. You losing your job, for example, and your missus having to go to work, right? You having to take a step down in your job, and then both of you having to work, which means you don't see each other that much. There's a lot of things that I would encourage you to start thinking about this kind of stuff. Start looking at your parents, looking at various things that they had to overcome, and begin to plan for them. It doesn't mean that things are not going to go right no matter how much you've planned, but I just think so many of you guys out here, you're not planning for anything. You're not planning for all the outcomes. You're just planning for one outcome, which is to become successful. And I've got to tell you, let me tell you the other reason why I say this to you. So I study a lot of people who've been like Olympians, footballers, all these kinds of people. And one of the difficult parts that they encounter and they have a real difficulty with is what happens when they get injured. Right? So if you're a footballer, it is possible for you to break your leg or something like that. And a lot of footballers, they can't recover from this. They go through a mental depression. They become suicidal. Why? Because they never looked at all the possible outcomes. They were just simply so focused on, I'm going to become successful. It's going to work, it's going to work. And it is. And you do need to think like that. But what I'm saying is, but you also need to be wise and say, okay, if it doesn't work out, what is my... for example, in America, this problem was so prevalent in the NFL and American football that they had to force children to basically have really good grades and to graduate from university. Because so many of them were so reliant and so determined that they were going to make it, but obviously not everybody can make it. If you have 1,000 kids all across America looking to get into the NFL, they clearly all can't make it. So some are not going to make it. But because so many people have this mentality of it's going to work, but they don't look on all the other avenues, what ends up happening is when it fails, they have no backup plan. They've not thought of any alternatives. And then they get into this rut and their life slows down and it causes loads of problems and then they don't have momentum. And it's just like they could have solved this problem. So that's just what I basically wanted to share with you. I don't know how useful that is for you, but I hope that it can in some way help you out as a lad. We're just talking to man here, remember, right? I know somebody may never say this to you, right? You may be like, for example, Cassim, I'm going to start a business. It's going to work. Okay, good. No problem. But ensure that you have savings so that if it doesn't work out, that you can still pay your mortgage, that you can still pay your rent, okay? This is what I'm saying. I understand that when you get married, that you two are meant for each other and it's wonderful. I get that. But what I'm saying is, look at advice on how to improve your marriage. Look, okay, I get it. You're a natural mother, right? But look at how can you become an even better parent? How can you become more conscious, a more conscious parent? It doesn't mean that you're not naturally good. It doesn't mean that you're not going to be successful. It just means you look at all the different avenues and don't leave all your eggs in one basket. Diversify is a word essentially that you're looking for. So that's the first thing that I wanted to talk to you. The second thing that I really wanted to talk to you comes from a guy called Peter. So in Tesco's, I work with a guy called Peter, and he is in charge of all the cleaners in Tesco's. And, Peter is a very fascinating guy for me because, many of you know, I'm an observer. One of the characteristics of people who I wanted to become like, who are great leaders, is that they are they're observers. They watch the world. They look for patterns. And so I spend a lot of my time observing, and I notice that Peter, when he's at work, is very disciplined. Whenever he's at work, he's at work. When he's on his break, he's on his break. He's like one of these people, right, where whatever it is that he's doing that thing. So if he's talking to his missus, he'll be talking to his missus. If he's at work, he will not find him on his phone. If he's with the lads, he's with the lads, and he won't find him anywhere else. And I said to Peter, I want to talk to you. What's your secret? I said to him. I don't understand. You seem very determined. You seem successful. You seem somebody who's on it. What is your secret? I said. This is a black guy. His name is Peter. Peter said something to me that I found really interesting. Peter said, Cassim, I found in my experience that a lot of people in life just simply don't work very hard. And they're never present. They don't do the best that they can do at whatever it is that they're doing. And so what I wanted to talk to you, just talking man to man here, one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about is, what is your philosophy about working? Because here's the philosophy that I've adopted. Back in the days, my philosophy was to do as little as possible, right? That was genuinely my philosophy. let me tell you the philosophy that I've adopted. My philosophy now is to do the best that I can at whatever it is that I do. So, for example, some of you, when you are at work and you in your job, you give your work 90%. Yet when you go home and you're spending time with your missus and when we look at the area of your relationships and your kids, you probably give it 30%. And this is what I began to realize about Peter, because I was like, this guy's always happy, he's always disciplined, he seems very fulfilled. You know them people that you meet sometimes and you're like, this person has it together. What they vibrate on a different frequency. And what I began to notice is that certain people who are happy and fulfilled and they're successful, these individuals, they seem to always be present and are doing the best that they can. And what I want to talk to you, again, just talking man to man, is I want to ask you to develop the philosophy that you're going to do the best that you can at whatever it is that you're doing. So if you're with your friends, be with your friends, man. Stop being with your friends and also being on Instagram and also being on Twitter and also thinking about work. If you are at work, be at work. Stop trying to be on Tinder and at the same time you're trying to speak to other people and you're trying to message the football group. Be at work if you're at work. If you are on the golf course with the lads, be on the golf course with the lads. Stop thinking about what you're going to do at work tomorrow or whatever. Be wherever it is that you are and give your all, because it just allows you to be able to have such a more enriched kind of life. You know, let me give you an example of what I mean by this. So me and I think I shared this last week. Me and my friends Simon and Dan, we went for Wagamama's last week. And when I was there, I, of course, paid attention to this kind of stuff. And I paid attention to how many times did these lads check their phones, and also what did we talk about. And, you know, it was interesting that Simon shared with us the fact that he had started going bald and he had difficulties with it when he started going bald, and he's finally embraced it. And I thought, God, some people don't even have that kind of friendship or don't have that level of connection with their friends, that their friends want to share that kind of intimate, vulnerable piece of information about who they are. So, like some of us lads, we are friends, but all we talk about is a football score. We don't even know who our friends are. We don't know what they're going through. We don't know what their dreams are. We don't know what their goals are. We don't know what they're working on. We can't even offer them advice because we spend so much time chatting about things that are just nonsense, stupidity, right? And I know you may be saying, well, Cassim, don't trigger me. Who do you think you are? I'm just saying, we're just talking man to man here. This isn't me like trying to say to you, you're not good enough or whatever. I'm just saying that you can refine, you can get better than what you are now. You can connect even deeper in your friendships and in your relationships than you currently are. I'm just saying that whenever it is that you speak to people, what do you speak about with them? What level of intimacy do you have in your relationship? Right? Because really, what I've come to understand is all the great things of life lie on the other side of commitment. When you fully commit yourself to something, that's when the magic of life is ignited, right? When you and your missus stop talking about where you're going to go on holiday and start talking about your dreams, your hopes, your fears, that's when your relationship takes on a whole different level. Do you know what I mean? There are people, and you tell me if I'm wrong here, but I bet you know people, friends of yours, where they've been to 12 different countries, yet if you asked that couple what their partner's fears were, they couldn't tell you. So they've been together, but they're not connected together. And I think this is, so it's like they're hollow. It's like having somebody who is dressed in the nicest suit out there, but they haven't ironed their t-shirt, right? It's kind of like fake. Do you know understand what I mean? Or like somebody going on a conference call and on top of them they're wearing a suit and everything, but underneath they're just in their boxers. There's something about it that just isn't right. Do you know what I mean? So you're seeing one side of something, and so that's just something that I wanted to share with you. So, and I just encourage you to really look at really how hard you work. As I said, Peter was saying to me, Cassim, one of the things that he's learned in life is that people don't work hard. And honestly, I don't even want to get into this too deep because some of you are going to get too triggered. But the reality is, some of you lads just don't work hard. You're lazy as fuck. And that's me being slightly a bit horrible, but I'm being horrible not because I want to berate you, but I'm being horrible to you because I want to encourage you to start working harder. The reality is, I cannot tell you the amount of lads who try to get away with doing as little as possible. I mean, it's almost a joke, right, when I start thinking about it. So many of you lads out there, and again, let's just speak man to man here, brother to brother, let's just talk. Some of you lads, when you go to work, you do not go to work to try and do the absolute best that you can, to give everything that you've got into your job. You will spend as much time in the toilet as possible. You will try to prolong your cigarette break as long as possible. You will try to go on your break and leave it until the absolute last minute as possible. Don't get me wrong, you're entitled to your cigarette break. You're entitled to your break. Right? Instead of turning up to work early and prepared to go and looking and preparing your day, you want to try and leave it absolutely until the absolute last minute before you have to clock in. And it's fascinating for me, but it just tells you a lot about the kind of person who you are. And I would ask you to ask yourself this: is that really the mentality of a winner? I mean, how many winners do you know that have the mentality of, I am going to do as little as possible and still try to be a champion, and still try to win, and still try to be the best that I can? And furthermore, and to take this even further without even triggering you even further, some of you lads who are listening to me, you are fathers, you are uncles, and the reality is that without you even realizing it, your nephews and your children are looking at you as an example of what they should be like. And without you even realizing it, sometimes when you're around them, you will try to get away with as little as possible. Even to the point of, when you or your missus are in the house, instead of you putting your plates in the dishwasher, you will leave your plate for your missus to clean it up because you know that she's that kind of person and she cares and she doesn't want the house to be a mess. So you've walked and taken your plate all the way to the sink, but instead of putting it in the dishwasher, you just leave it on the sink. And your child watches you. You don't even realize your child is watching you, but your child watches you do this and they just presume, oh, that's what a man is supposed to be like. That is what a man is supposed to do. And I just want to challenge you today to really begin to look at that. And we're just talking about this morally as well, right? Just in terms of your character. I posted something the other day on my social media about Donald Trump, about Michael Jackson, and somebody commented on it. And one of the things that I talked about was that there is a real difference between being successful and character. It is possible to be a dickhead, an arsehole, an evil person and still become successful. But it doesn't mean that you're a good man. It doesn't mean that you're noble. What I try to do, and the way that I've tried to think about this for myself is, when I win, I want to win because I deserve it. If I'm the person who is promoted in my workplace, I want to be promoted because I genuinely deserve it. It's a mentality that I started to pick up amongst winners that was difficult for me. Because when I started looking at how can I be successful and be a good person and not step on everybody to get there, I essentially had to learn that in order for me to do that, I genuinely had to be a good person. Because the lure to do less than I can, the lure to be lazy, the lure to cheat is so easy for us guys. It is so easy. Women are a lot more better at not cheating and stepping on other people to get what they want. They're much better at that. But men, we have the propensity to be able to do that. And so I would encourage you to really look at, as a man, your character. Understand that just because you are successful, it doesn't mean that you're a good guy. It doesn't mean that you've won fairly. Winners, genuine. Do you know what? It's been so fascinating for me studying people like Messi, Ronaldo, David Beckham, these Usain Bolt. Because one of the things that I've come to realize about these winners is that these people, they don't even want to win if the conditions are not fair. They want to ensure that they are on the same level playing ground as everybody else. Because you know why? Because when they win, they know they deserved it. They know that it was genuinely, they worked hard, they put in the work, and they genuinely deserve it. I wonder how many of you could honestly say that in your relationship, you deserve what people say about your relationship, that you've got a great marriage. Can you honestly say you've put in work, you've researched how men and women work, you've looked at helping your missus out, you've looked at the different body languages and how people receive love. So genuinely, you've worked to get your relationship where it is. It has not been easy, right? Sometimes you've had to shut your mouth, even though you know you're right. Even though your missus has drove you fucking nuts and you know you're right. For example, I was speaking to a brother and he said to me, Cassim, me and my missus were out at a party and she was saying some stupidity. She was saying some nonsense, man, that was not true. But I still, at the party, had to agree with her, because if I make her look like an idiot in front of other people, her respect for me is going to decrease. But then when we got home, I said to her, babes, you can't say things like that. Right? Because in the privacy of our own home, it's okay. But if I say in front of other people that she's stupid and she's saying nonsense, not only do people lose respect for me, but also for her, right? And I thought, wow. And so he goes, so Cassim, in that situation, I had to shut up and agree with her, even though I knew she was wrong. Right? And I wonder whether you have that kind of mentality. I wonder when you go to work, whether you're the kind of person where everybody else is doing less than what they can do, and you're the only person in the organization who's genuinely going to work and putting in 90% every day. Everybody else is trying to get away with going on their break as long as possible, and they're trying to leave on time. They don't want to leave even a minute later. But yet, you are the one. If you can make that extra phone call, you will. If you have to spend an extra half an hour with your clients so that you can provide a good service or product, you do it. Because ethically, it's the right thing. And also, you want to be a person who is moral. You want to be a person of character. You want to be a person of conviction. I wonder if I'm describing you. I don't know. We're just talking man to man here, so just something for you to think about. Right. The third thing that I want to talk to you about today is I want to talk about becoming a problem solver. Right. How shall I begin this with you? Let me begin this with you by looking at it this way. So, I wondered a question. I wanted to understand something which fascinated me for ages. I wanted to know, you know, when you, in your workplace, so let's say you work for, I don't know, a sales company, I wanted to know what is the difference between all the junior people in the company and like the director and the manager and the regional directors and the CEO. What was the difference? What is it? Why is it that the CEO got paid more money than the person who's just joined the company? And I began to realize that basically the higher up you go in anything in life, the more problems you have to solve. So, for example, let me take it like this. If you work in a company, let's say Tesco's, and you want to be the regional manager, a regional manager deals with more problems on a daily basis than the person who is just a branch manager. The branch manager usually has to do with everybody, all the problems in that branch. The regional manager has to do with all the problems in all the different branches that they have to handle, plus all the problems that they're getting handled from above. I wondered, okay, so if you're in a relationship and you want to take your relationship to a whole new height and a whole new level, What's the difference? And I began to realize that you have to basically start solving deeper problems. So, for example, when you first start off dating your missus, the only problems really that you have to solve is, does she like you? Are you saying the right things? And what I began to notice is, as you go up in levels of your relationship, where you start, for example, getting engaged, where you start, for example, getting married, buying a house, having children, you have to solve more problems. For example, you have to, for example, solve the problem of, are we going to live at your place or my place? Are we going to rent or are we going to buy somewhere? Am I going to put up most of the deposit and use my deposit, or are we going to use your deposit? Are we going to get married in England or abroad? Are we going to live near your family or far away from your family? Are we going to send our children to private school or normal public school? What religion do we raise our children in? Do you see what I'm saying? The higher up you go, the more problems you have to solve and the deeper the problems become. And what I began to notice is that some of you guys who are listening to me, you are doing everything possible to basically avoid problems. And the reality is, and I can speak for myself, some of you have grown up in an environment where there's been a lot of conflict in your family. Your mum and dad were constantly arguing. Your grandparents were constantly arguing with your dad, right? There's been a lot of conflict in your house. And as a result, one of the things that you've tried to do as you've got older is basically try to avoid conflict, because it brought you so much pain when you were younger, right? And it brought you so much heartache, and it brought you trauma. And some of you lads, and I want to talk to you directly because I think this is really important for you. Some of you lads, what I've come to understand is you are still thinking like a sheep instead of a lion. You are thinking like an employee instead of an employer. And the thing is, most of life is basically determined by your ability to solve problems, right? If you want to be happy, if you look at it as a problem to solve, you are going to have much more success than if you basically become passive, right? If you are, for example, unhappy in your life, and you're waiting on your mum to change, or your dad to change, or your boss to change, or the weather to change, or to go on holiday, you're going to be fucked. Is the only way, excuse me, is the only way that I can explain this. Because these things are all things that are outside of yourself. But if you begin to look at this as a way of, actually, Cass, you know what? Let me see how I can solve this problem. Let me see if I can go and find some people who've managed to solve this happiness thing. Let me go and study people and ask people who I've seen are quite happy. Let me ask them what they're doing. Not only does that give you power, but it also helps you become a problem solver, right? You all of a sudden have control over different areas of your life. And particularly for you guys who want to make a lot of money, I would share with you that if you're like me and you're in a mindset and one of your things is that you want to basically earn lots of money, the more money you want to earn, the more and the bigger problems you're going to have to solve. For example, some of you who are listening to me, you don't even realize that this is an issue. The more money you earn, the bigger problem you're going to have. Did you know that? So when you earn, for example, I don't know, $2,000 a month, you're going to have a certain level of problems, i.e. rent, i.e. Your bills, phone bills, whatever. That's a certain level of problems. Imagine getting to a point where you earn £20,000 every month. You now have a very different set of problems to worry about. You've got to look at, how do I invest the money? Where do I send the money? Right? Do I buy this certain type of house? Do I invest in a property? Do I invest in multiple properties? Do I put my money in mutual funds? Do I buy gold? You all of a sudden have more problems to worry about. Most people wouldn't even realize that, right? I've only realized it because I've got to the point where I've started making enough money to the degree that I can invest it and stuff like that. And I didn't even think I would have this problem. I thought if you have lots of money, your life would be easy. No, it isn't. Your life becomes more difficult. right? You've got to, for example, now at the moment, I've got to constantly watch the markets. What's the gold market doing? Are the prices going to plummet? Because if the price is going to plummet, I need to look at selling my gold and putting it into liquid cash. And then later on, I'll buy the gold, right? Just before the prices increase again, but I'll buy it at lower price, which means I'll make a profit long term. But do you see what I mean? It's so many more problems I have had to think about than I did before. And I wonder whether you're the kind of person who's a problem solver, you're the kind of person who's constantly thinking outside the box, constantly looking at ways you can overcome this, ways you can overcome that. Okay, so you and your missus, you're in an argument, right? Okay, you and your missus, really, there is a disconnect in your relationship at the moment. Are you the kind of person who's thinking, right, I've got to solve this. Let me go and buy a book on how to connect with your missus. Let me go and see a therapist. Some of you, right, and I meet a lot of guys who have anger problems. You have anger problems, bro. Like, you get this rage, this anger builds up inside of you and you almost feel like you're going to burst open. Bro, do you know that there are thousands of people who've had that kind of issue? My thing to you is, why don't you start thinking about it in terms of it's a problem you've got to solve? And start, for example, looking at therapy, looking at counseling, looking at massages, looking at breathing techniques, looking at books, looking at maybe boxing it may be for you, right? Start becoming a problem solver. Because the more you can become a problem solver, the bigger the problems you can solve, the more peace you can have, and the much bigger life that you can live. So many of us, we have the ability, for example, to affect the financial well-being of our family, but because we're like, well, Cass, I don't want to become a manager, because if I become a manager, then I'm going to have to manage people, then I'm going to be in charge of people, and you don't want to move into a position where you can give your family financial stability because you don't want to become a problem solver. You don't want any responsibility in your life. But as a brother, we're just talking man to man here. I encourage you to do it, man. I encourage you to really become and get into that mindset of becoming a problem solver. Get away from that mindset of thinking as an employee and start becoming and thinking as an employer. Start thinking in terms of a business person. So for example, if at the moment you're struggling with money or what to do, for example, at the moment you have a dream, and with your dream, you're like, Cassim, well, my thing is, I want to go traveling, but I don't have the money. Okay, start thinking about it in terms of, if you had a business and you needed to get your product out, but you lacked money, what would you do? If you want to go traveling around the world, but you're like, Cassim, but I don't have anybody who wants to go traveling around the world. Okay, think about it in terms of a business. If a business had a problem and you were the owner of that business, their problem was that they want to send their product across the globe, but they don't know how to do it. What would the owner do? Would they get a coach? Would they find a new avenue? What would they do? If you can start thinking in this way, it puts your mindset into this incredible way of looking for solutions instead of complaining about stuff. And that's why I'm drumming so hard on this, because some of you in your life, all you do is complain about shit. Cassim, I have anger management problems. Cassim, I'm not happy. Cassim, I'm depressed. Cassim, I don't have any friends. Cassim, I never have a social life. Cassim, I don't have anyone I trust. Cassim, I can't get a girl. All you do is complain and complain and complain and complain like a little bitch. I'm just saying to you, and this is what I'm suggesting, you do whatever you want with your life. Open your mind to start becoming a problem solver. Start looking at these things as, right, it's my job to solve these problems. If you can begin to think like that, trust me, one of the things that you're going to get in your life is momentum. There's this guy called John Maxwell, and he says momentum is a leader's best friend. You want to lead your life, not follow. You want to be a lion, not a sheep. A sheep goes bah. A lion goes roar. It goes after what it wants with vigor, with passion, with drive, with with tenacity. That's what you want to do with your life. You want to go at your life with a tenacity, and you want to really tap into some of that human willpower that you have in you and just go for the things that you want, man. And you can have them. And I encourage you to do it. The last thing before we finish that I want to talk to you about is I want to talk to you about being open-minded. Now, this week I've been reading this really interesting book called Falling into Grace. And it talked about open-mindedness. I want to share something with you that it began. There it is. You can see that? Yeah? Let me share with you what it said. It said this. Before we can really open our senses in order to find our inner stability, we must understand what it means to really open our minds. What does the term open-minded really mean? We hear all the time to be open-minded is a good thing. Yet we turn the idea of open-mindedness into yet another goal we need to accomplish, as if it was some new self-improvement project, something else that we need to achieve. Open-mindedness comes naturally as we begin to see the ways that we argue with our experience, with events that are in fact removable and unchangeable. Right, this is important. I'm going to be frank with you guys, and I told you at the beginning of this that I was going to trigger some of you. You lads, I know you think you're open-minded, and you're open-minded and you're open to stuff. You're not. Okay, you're not, man. And let me prove to you how I know this. If you live in the UK, I would say that there's probably, anywhere in the UK, there is probably 6 or 7 different, in your town, 6 or 7 different cultures or people from different countries that live in your town. My question to you is, can you honestly say to me that you know that many people? In fact, let me take this further. Most people who live in the UK have access to black people. My question to you is, can you honestly tell me that you've spent a considerable amount of time around black people if you are white? And if you're black, my question to you is, how much time can you honestly say you've spent around other Nepalese people, around Lithuanians, around Polish people? Because I think that a lot of open-mindedness really starts with this ability to find people who oppose you. Because the thing is, really what open-mindedness, in my definition, is the ability to accept other people who have opposing beliefs, opposing lifestyle, opposing traditions, opposing faiths, and still see them as your equal. And I've got to be honest with you that some of you who are listening to me, you've not been around people who oppose you in any way. And that's part of the reason why you really, as a human being, you haven't grown. You've changed, like your hair has changed, your health has changed, but you haven't grown as a person, because growth mandates that you have something to overcome. And I've got to be honest with you that some of you lads, you just haven't been around anything that challenges you. You avoid people who contradict you. And my question to you is, and I guess is what I challenge you to do over the next year, is how many people can you get around that oppose you? For example, I was talking to me and my dad and my brother, we went for a meal yesterday in this very nice place called the Real Greek in Berkshire in Reading. And we were talking about this, where my little brother said to me, Cassim, I find it difficult to have conversations with people now, because he said, I upset so many people because people just say statements without realizing what they've said, and then I don't agree with that statement, and then they get upset. And I found this to be true for myself. There's so many people who just make statements, but they've never really thought about the statement that they've just made. They've never thought about what they've just actually said, right? And I think to myself, bro, do you even realize what you've just said? Let me tell you something that really triggered this for me. So I was talking to my boy, and we were talking about Brexit, okay? And we were talking about Donald Trump. And he said something to me I'll never forget. He goes to me, Cassim, with Brexit, obviously loads of people voted for Brexit. And I was like, yeah, but I didn't think that many people really were racist, and I didn't think that many people really wanted immigration that much. And he goes to me, yeah, but Cass, people will pretend they don't believe it to your face, but in private they don't actually agree with it. And I didn't really fully understand what he said to me until I really thought about it. So basically, someone can be racist. So some of you will know people who are actually racist in their private home, but when they see you, they're not racist, and they'll be nice, and they'll be friends, and it'll be all banter, and it'll be all nice. And I thought about this and thought, holy shit. So there are some people who genuinely don't like black people, but in front of black people will be polite. And I thought, they've never really opened their mind to really receiving what black people have to offer, or Polish people, or Lithuanians, or any kind of other people. Some of you who are listening to me, you've never tried food that is from a different countries. You know, me and my brother, we were talking about this, where he was saying to me that he knows people who will say, for example, they don't like, what did he say to me? People will say they don't like, I think it was mushrooms or something. And he goes, yeah, but hold on a minute, but you haven't even tried mushrooms. Or people will say, well, I don't like spicy food. And you're like, well, hold on a minute, but you haven't tried spicy food. You've tried one type of spicy food. Or people will say, yeah, well, you know what, I don't like steak. And you're like thinking, well, hold on a minute, you've only tasted steak once. You've never tasted any other steak. So how could you possibly say that you don't like it? Or people will say, I don't eat vegetarian food. And you're thinking, but you've never even eaten vegetarian food. So how can you say that you don't like vegetarian food? And what I've come to realize is a lot of us, and I speak for myself, which is why I'm able to speak on this, we have stuff that we have picked up along the way through life, and we've never really questioned it. We've never really examined some of the things that we're saying. And what I would challenge you to do is really look at how open-minded are you. Even in your relationship, some of the problems that you're having in your relationship, they're not coming from the fact that you don't love your missus, but they're coming from the fact that you cannot accept the fact that your missus wants to sit at the dinner table, but you were brought up to sit in front of the telly. You've been brought up in a household where your father was the breadwinner, but your missus in your household is actually the breadwinner. She earns more money than you. Some of you have been brought up in a family where you've never had any animals. You know, I hear a lot of people say, well, I don't like dogs. And I'm thinking, how can you say you don't even like dogs? You've never even had a dog in your life. You mean you've seen dogs that have been violent, and so in the back of your mind you've been like, oh, well, that's why I don't like dogs. But you've never had a dog and the incredible bond that you can have with dogs. You've never had it. So how can you make that kind of statement? So that kind of brings us to an hour, and what finishes off what I wanted to tell you last week. As you can tell, that's why I ran out of time. There's so much that I wanted to talk to you about. But I hope that maybe something that I say today was useful. I hope that something that I shared with you today can help you become a higher, fuller expression of yourself. But maybe you disagree with me, or I don't know. Like, what do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think you're open-minded? Do you think people don't work hard, or they do work hard? Do you think that a lot of people are waiting on like their inheritance, or to kind of figure out their money problems, or do you disagree with that? You know, I am a guy where, and this is, I guess, is a good place for us to finish today as a good close. One of the philosophies that I live my life by is by something that I heard a man called Dr. Wayne Dyer say. He said that you want to have a mind which is open to everything and is attached to nothing. A mind where you will allow yourself to be open to new things that come into your life, new experiences, new beliefs. And I wonder whether some of you are so closed off that you are going to be the same person who we meet. You're going to believe the same things. You're going to talk about the same things. You're going to have the same way of thinking when we meet you in 20 years. Or you're the kind of person who would have grown. Even though change is going to happen naturally, you would have grown. You would have become wiser. You would have become more loving. You would have become more passionate. I wonder if you are actually going to be better when we meet you in 20 years, or whether you are relying on some magical way that you're going to get better. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel Cassim It on YouTube. And I shall see you in the next episode, number 4 next week. Bye for now. Cheers, guys.